Hey, what's going on, guys? Kalamazi here, and this is going to be my 10.0 Dragonflight Affliction Warlock DPS guide. In it, we're going to be covering talents, single target, AOE, rotations, single target, AOE, stats, gems, consumables, enchants, pets, tier gear, and a few other things along the way. Now, if you see any weak ORs, add-ons, or profiles in this video like to acquire, links to my Twitch and my Discord down below. We can hop in and grab them all for free. !WA, and either will pull the link up for you to my Wago and my Pastebin, where they are all there for you guys. If you'd like to support on Patreon, there's a link up here, as well as a few other social media links you can check out if you like. With that being said, let's just jump right into the video. Okay, so getting into the Warlock class tree, I will say off the bat that the Warlock class tree does not have a lot of damage-based traits in it. They're mostly utility and defensiveness, but we have a lot of both those. So now off the bat here, Demonic Circle, a baseline ability for every Warlock spec. It's well known, it's iconic, it's Demonic Circle. 1 point being spent in Fell Domination for shorter pet cast summons once every 3 minutes if need be. 1 point being spent in Burning Rush, giving your character a passive movement speed increase, but also taking some damage while it's active. The cool thing about Burning Rush, though, is that 2 points being spent in Fiendish Stride greatly negates the damage taken from Burning Rush to the point where you can almost leave it on permanently in any raid or dungeon-based setting and take nearly no damage at all. 2 points being spent in Fell Armor here for just more DR, Soul Leech value. 2 points in Demon Skin for more Soul Leech value. 1 point being spent in Curses of Enfeeblement here. Tongues, Exhaustion, good in PvP, good in PvE, good in most content. You can certainly find uses for them. 1 point being spent in Mortal Coil, short cooldown, a good heal effect, and an incap if need be. 1 point in Demonic Fortitude, 1 point in Wrath of Minion, 1 point in Demonic Inspiration, and 1 point in Demonic Embrace. So between Demonic Embrace and Demonic Fortitude, you get a 5% and a 10%, a whopping 15% stamina increase, plus 2 abilities here being Wrath of Minion and Demonic Inspiration that give just baseline pet damage increases whenever you fill a shard up. Now, coming out of this row, you have the option of, well, basically, you go into Demonic Gateway here. Demonic Gateway is very good in certain spots, okay in others, and bad in some settings, but realistically, Demonic Gateway is the best option to get Shadow Fury here as well, because Banish into Greater Banish and or Nightmare just seems sort of awkward and very, very niche. More niche than Demonic Gateway for sure. So you go 1 point in Demonic Gateway, typically 1 point in Shadow Fury. Then back over here, 1 point in Sweet Souls, which is an iconic Legion trait returning. Baseline more Health Stone healing, plus Health Stone healing whenever somebody in your party or raid eats one. 1 point being spent in either Dark Accord or Strength of Will, based on what damage bench you're going up against. Shorter cooldown on your main defensive base spell, or a larger effect to it, whatever you want. Personal preference. And then 1 point here being spent in Dark Pact. Dark Pact is a 1 minute cooldown. However, with Frequent Donor, it becomes a 45-second cooldown, which gives you a very, very large shield effect once every minute, every 45 seconds, essentially. Very, very strong, very good to have. This is one of the abilities that makes Warlock exceptionally tanky in every scenario. Now, coming out of here, we have Accrue Vitality or Lifeblood. Now, if you're playing Affliction, which we are, Accrue Vitality works sort of with Inevitable Demise. Inevitable Demise will increase the damage of your drain life based on agony ticks. Now, it'll stack to 50 at max stacks. Accrue Vitality will not increase your damage that you do when you cast that max stack drain life. However, if you're low on health, it will heal you for even more. So if you're looking for that kind of healing in certain spots like PvP, maybe holding a big drain for something like that, Accrued could be better. At the same time, from overall more general defensiveness and just general utility, 2 points in Lifeblood's fine too. I'm going to put 2 here, up to you wherever you want to go. Look up to you. Personal preference. Moving on from here, we have 1 point being spent in Soul Link. 10% damage you take is given to your demon instead. 2 points in Soul Conduit. 2 points in Synergy, being a flat damage increase proc, and a chance for shards not be consumed or be refunded essentially whenever you cast one or use one. We have 4 points left here. So you should take either Soul Keeper or Inquisitor's Gaze. Now, they're not very good damage-based traits, but they're better than nothing. Some damage is better than no damage. Inquisitor's Gaze is more of a single target-based ability, versus this being more of an AoE one. I'll opt for Inquisitor's Gaze here, and you have 3 points left. Now, if you're playing Affliction, you're playing Inevitable Demise, Grim Feast is worth taking with Inevitable Demise. It does not make your drain life tick more. It will do the same damage over the course of the drain life. It'll just finish 30% faster, so you can cast other spells, refresh dots faster, cast raptures faster. It's worth taking if you're playing Inevitable Demise. If you're not, it's pretty mediocre. Now, 2 points being left here. You put a point in Fell Synergy for just more Soul Leech value and pet and passive healing. This 1 point can go into Soul Burn. You can put it in Resolute Barrier. You can put it in Banish, Amplify Curse. If you want 2 points, you can pull a point out of Shadow Fury for Banish, Greater Banish. You can go Curse, Satyr, If you want to grab something else, you can do it too. The Warlock class tree is incredibly customizable. You have a lot of utility, a lot of tankiness, a lot of defensiveness, and a little bit of damage along the way. It might be a little bland at certain points, but it's certainly one of the better class trees in the game. Okay, so getting into Affliction Warlock talents. Now, I will say off the bat that I'm going to give you general templates here of what you can play in single target, a few different ones in AoE, but there are going to be, with talent trees being so customizable, there are going to be a lot of options, and some things might change from fight to fight, even in single target. For example, you might want, let's say maybe you even want, like on a fight that's mostly single target, maybe a bit of add spawn at certain points, you might want Seed of Corruption, and so the Seeds. You might want Soul Flame over Inevitable Demise. It totally depends on a fight-by-fight kind of basis and scenario, but these are great starter general template builds. I have links down below to them in the video description. So, starting off, Malefic Rapture, 1 point, your main Soul Shard Spender, 1 point, Unstable Affliction, this is your main dot, does a lot of damage, 1 point in Nightfall, which makes your corruption ticks have a chance to make your Shadow Bolt or Drain Soul deal more damage, and your Shadow Bolt's instant cast, Drain Soul channels faster, if this procs. 2 points in Shadow's Embrace here, single target prio damage increase, a buff you have to maintain, but if you cast a Shadow Bolt, or in this case, a Drain Soul, once at any point over 16 seconds, it refreshes. It's basically just get it 3 stacks and forget it. It refreshes passively. Now you have 1 point here in Xavian Teachings, Corruption's instant cast. That's a bit of damage. The big points that change here are Siphon Life, AC at times, or Singularity and Vile Taint. Now, in a single target setting, you will want Siphon Life, and you will want PS being Phantom Singularity, because Siphon Life is another dot. Rapture does more damage with more dots active, and it does more damage baseline in a single target setting than what Absolute Corruption would do with Corruption. We have 2 points here in Wrath and Agony as well, just more Agony stacks, ramps faster, all that. Now, there might be fights on certain fights in the raid or in whatever setting you're in where you might want to play Absolute Corruption or maybe Vile Taint for whatever reason. But for a single target priority setting, Siphon Life, PS are going to be your best options. So heading down here, coming out of Drain Soul, we have 2 points in Inevitable Demise. This greatly empowers your Drain Lives, making them do a lot more damage. It caps at 50 stacks. However, you gain stacks whenever Agony ticks. So if there's multiple targets, Agony's ticking multiple times, you're gaining stacks much faster in 2 target, 3 target, but it's not a bad option in single target either. A lot of healing, we talked about it a bit ago here, also playing Burn Reach with it if you're Affliction. Solid all-around talent to have. 2 points here in Withering Bolt, just a flat damage increase. Shadow Bolt and Drain Soul deal 15% increased damage, up to 45 per dot active. So they capped it at 3 dots. You're going to have basically Agony, Corruption, maybe Siphon Life, but certainly Agony, Corruption, and Unstable Affliction active at all times in single target. There's a 45% increase to both Shadow Bolt and or Drain Soul. We have 2 points here in Pandemic Invocation, refreshing dots in Pandemic. Chance to deal damage, give you a shard. 2 points here in Sacrilegious Dark Strike, giving you a corruption damage increase. The curse effect is sort of irrelevant in single target, but it's still there. 1 point here in Soul Tap. Now, Soul Tap is very interesting because on certain fights, it's very good. If you have a large Soul Leech Shield, sack part of it, get a shard. Fights like Taros, for example, the Patrick boss in Bolt of the Incarnates, a lot of frequent incoming damage, so you don't have a very large Soul Leech Shield. Other fights, for example, where it's not a lot of passive incoming damage, but larger damage events, not as frequent as other fights, you can build that shield, tap once or twice, and get some value out of it. So it's very hit or miss. Still not a bad option to have around. Very good Mythic Plus, but sort of hit or miss in single target. You can pre-soul tap the 5 shards before the boss is pulled. So very important to know that, and it does give you a bit of more initial burst whenever you're entering a fight. Now 1 point here, Creeping Death. Your Agony, Corruption, Siphon Life, and Unstable Affliction deal damage 15% faster. Dots tick faster, worth grabbing, good in single target, basically good everywhere. 2 points here in Malefic Afflictions. So Malefic Rapture causes your active Unstable Affliction to deal 13% additional damage up to 39 for the rest of its duration. Unstable Affliction is going to be probably your main source of damage in single target for the most part. It will be if you're doing it right. So a large increase to UA. And the final talent here being Dread Touch. If Malefic Affliction exceeds 3 stacks, the target instead takes 30% additional damage from your damage over time effects for 6 seconds. So that's not just Unstable Affliction, that's Agony, Corruption, Siphon Life, and Singularity. If you're rolling those at any time, it's just a big overall dot damage increase. AF, dot base spec, does dot damage. 1 point here in Tormented Crescendo, just a chance to get an instant cast proc of Rapture, good to have around. 1 point here in Haunt. a basic 10% damage increase to whatever target has Haunt on it. It's been around for a long time. It's a good, just solid single target increase. 2 points here in Seize Vitality. This is basically a very bad talent, but one, you're sort of paying a tax for the one below it by spending 2 points in this, because the final point, Haunted Soul. Your Haunt spell also increases the damage over time. It also increases the damage of your damage over time effects to all targets by 20% while active. Now, yes, that might mean if you're in a AoE setting, every mob's taking more damage from your dots. That's true. Even in a single target, though, this will empower every dot. Agony, Corruption, Siphon Life, UA, Singularity, other dots you're playing them. Very strong ability. Unfortunately, Seize Vitality is sort of a tax. You got to pay to get to it. And finally, the last talent here, 1 point in Summon Darkglare, being your main 2-minute cooldown, extends dots when it comes out. There's a bit of damage with the Eye Beam, not a crazy amount, but still, 1 point investment is certainly worth it. Gives you that 2-minute AF damage profile that we're all used to. And that's basically that. Once again, this tree is very customizable. On a fight, you might, let's say, for example, you want to place all the seeds on a fight. You can pull 2 points from somewhere up here, go like this, maybe toss it somewhere else, go so, bang, bang. You can still grab, essentially, the same talents. If there's AoE in a fight, you can change this to Soul Flame here as well. You can have a Soul Flame profile instead of ID. Af's tree is very customizable. The problem is that, even though it looks very good in single target, the damage is not there. But the damage is there in AoE. Let's look at that. Now, if you're looking at playing Affliction in an AoE setting or stacked cleave setting, it's actually a very good option. Affliction can bring a lot of stacked AoE burst cleave depending on the build you're playing. Now, if you watch the single target section, the build doesn't change a whole lot from that. You sort of just shift points from this part of the tree to this part of the tree if you're looking to play the large, biggest AoE build that we have. We are putting a point in Sow the Seeds here, 1 point in Seed of Corruption. We are skipping out on Pandemic Invocation. Now, I will say right now, I am playing Soul Flame as well over Inevitable Demise. If you're playing Soul Rot, every target that has Soul Rot on it, if you cast Drain Life, it will cleave onto that target. So a max stack of ID with a Soul Rot Drain Life will indeed hit all 4 or 5 targets with a fully empowered Drain Life. Even with that being said, I found it sort of lackluster in Mythic Plus, not as good as it may have seemed. I opted for Soul Flame here. There are some builds you can play just pulling 2 points somewhere from the tree and putting it like 2 and 2. That's fine. In certain dungeons like Halls of Valor, other ones that have like that aren't as mob dense, like a Ruby Life Pools or maybe even a Quarter Star at certain points in time, right? You might want ID over Soul Flame. Once again, these trees will change a lot based on different settings you're in. It's not just, 7 rows of 2 different options that we had in Shadowlands. These trees are very customizable, so you have to make, your own decisions, essentially. Now, the big thing here, so there are 3 different builds we can look at. This is going to be what I refer to as like the Grim Reach build. Grim Reach being this trait here. When Darkglare deals damage, it deals 50% of that damage to all enemies affected by your damage over time effects. The trait before it, Malevolent Visionary. Darkglare increases its damage by an additional 5% for each damage over time effect active. Each. There's no, each. If there's multiple mobs and multiple agonists rolling, multiple corruptions, there's a big amp on your Darkglare. It also lasts 10 seconds longer. So it's a half-minute active duration. A very strong effect if you're looking for big AoE burst once every 2 minutes. We have points over here in Soul Rot. We know what Soul Rot is. It's an ability from Shadowlands. If you don't, it's this basically, a 1 minute cooldown on a dot. It'll apply the dot to 4 mobs, and it does work well with Inevitable Demise, the talent here if you're playing it. Now below this is a talent called Soul Eater's Gluttony. When Unstable Affliction deals damage, the cooldown of Soul Rot is reduced by 1 second. So I've had around the 35-ish second mark, roughly, with about 25% haste on beta. It makes it about a half a minute cooldown, give or take, depending on what you're doing, which syncs very well with Bile Taint we're playing here over Phantom Singularity. Now, the final option here being Dark Harvest. Each target affected by your Soul Rot, being this, increases your haste and crit by 2.5% for 8 seconds. So if you're playing Sow the Seeds, or Seed with Sow, and this talent here, this gives you a very strong just burst profile, essentially every 35-ish seconds. If you can hit your Soul Rot, just spam seeds and go. Launch multiple haste crit buff seeds, you're doing a lot of damage. Now, the other options in this, well, I guess other things we changed in this tree. Bile Taint, PS has gone to Bile Taint in Mythic Plus. So Bile Taint's been changed in Shadowlands, or in Dragonflight, I'm sorry. It now applies Agony to every target hit up to 8, which is a huge quality of life increase. Previously, on these mass pulls Mythic Plus and Shadowlands, when everyone else is going crazy and popping CDs and doing 1 million damage, we're going Agony, Agony, Agony. It felt terrible. Now, you pull a pack, Bile Taint, 8 agonies rolling at once, which also means really fast ID stacks in Mythic Plus if you're playing it. To a similar extent, we're playing Absolute Corruption here over Siphon Life. I have seen some SL play in Plus if you're looking for a weird, like, a hybrid kind of profile. We'll get to it in a minute here, but more corruption damage, permanent corruption, Vile Taint, Agony applications for every pack. Very strong, just overall burst profile. And the final option here we're still playing is Creeping Death for just passive dot damage increase. Now, I call this more or less the Grim Reach build. However, there are a couple variations you can change here, I guess, create however you want to look at it. So, there's another build that is more referred to as like the Haunt the Soul kind of build. You go into Haunt, 2 points in Seize Vitality, and 1 point in Haunted Soul. And this is like a middle ground kind of build. So, the issue with this build over here, if you're playing Dark Lair and Grim Reach and this whole Soul Rot row, is that it does very good AoE every 2 minutes with Dark Lair. Very, very strong. But the single target is abysmal. You have no Siphon Life, no PS, no Haunt. You do nothing. You're basically AFK. It's very, very subpar. However, this build opts for Haunt. It opts for Haunted Soul, which is a bit of a single target damage increase. And for what it's worth, you could just say, hey, I want to play this instead, like this, and pull a point out of here and just go into that. But either way, not having this row or this row is a significant loss in single targets. You got to pick and choose your battles, right? So second build I'd say is more like this, the Haunted Soul / Grim Reach build. It's a bit of a hybrid build. It's not incredible in single target, and you lose a lot of burst with no Soul Rot, no Dark Harvest kind of ability every half a minute, but people have been playing it post nerf to Dark Harvest, because it was indeed 5% for a while. Now it's 2.5%, but it's sort of up to you. Oh, we are playing 1 point in Wrath of Consumption as well. Passive dot damage increase. It lasts a long time. If a mob dies, it refreshes the stack for half a minute. Good ability and plus. A good ability when you're pulling multiple mobs back to back to back. If things are dying quickly, over and over, you can chain this buff for a very long time. So this build is number 2. I called it more like the Haunted Soul / Grim Reach build. Bit of a hybrid. Good AoE, decent AoE, cooldown based, and solid, like, okay single target, a bit more sustained damage. Now, if you're looking for more of a single target profile, you can go like this. No points here, only Dark Lair, and go double Malefic Affliction and Doom Blossom. Now, you can leave this point here if you want. You can put it over here in Crescendo. I'd probably leave it here, but you still have Dark Lair. There's no AoE effects. You still have Haunt, Haunted Soul, Creeping Death, Malefic Affliction, UA damage increase, so priority damage increase, obviously. And you have Doom Blossom. If corruption damages a target affected by unstable affliction, it has a 10% chance per stack of Malefic Affliction to deal shadow damage to nearby enemies. So basically, you have 3 stacks of this max. So whenever corruption ticks, after you rapture 3 times in a setting you're playing this ability in, there is a 30% chance whenever corruption ticks for this thing to proc and do like an AoE kind of shadow ability. Now, just going into this row and getting this trait gives you a lot more single target. It amplifies your UA a good bit, because this is your main damage spell in single target. And this ability does indeed work in single target. It'll cleave itself, but once again, this build is like more of a single target based build. But if you're not playing Siphon Life, not playing PS, you're still hurting a lot in single target. So personally, I probably just opt for the Grim Reach build, playing a fully empowered Dark Lair, Visionary, Grim Reach, and maybe probably Soul Rot, Soul Eater's Gluttony, and Dark Harvest early on, at least, for big AoE. And in single target, just sort of is what it is. It feels like even playing like the most single target based build possible while having okay AoE with like Doom Blossom and everything else, it just seems like you should play towards your strengths and not try and like find this weird hybrid middle build, like middle ground build, because in the end, AF is bad in single target, even playing the full single target build. So play to your strengths. I like Grim Reach the most. I like this build the most. Grim Reach, Malevolent Visionary, all that stuff. This build right here. Bang, bang, bang. Pull these points. Bang, bang, and bang. If you want to play Haunt for a little more single target, you can over CD. It's fine. Up to you. You can play ID over Soul Flame. Up to you. But the big thing, AF is very strong in burst AoE. Soul Flame's good on packs dying quickly. A lot of small mobs dying fast. But it's single target. Mythic Plus, pretty lackluster. Now, when it comes to gems in Dragonflight, you're limited to 1 Primalist gem at a time, and the one you want to acquire is the Fierce Illimited Diamond, granting 75 primary stat and 66 haste. Now, if you're looking for more just general quality gems you can wear more than one of, the Quick Ephemeral grants a whopping 88 haste. However, this is a pure secondary stat gem. There are a handful of gems that have 2 secondary stats on them, for example, like Keen Ephemeral, granting 70 haste and 33 mastery, and Keen Netherite granting 70 mastery and 33 haste. Now, if you're playing Affliction or Demonology, chances are high you're going to want either Quickest Emerald, Keenest Emerald, or Keen Netherite with your 1 Fierce Unlimited Diamond. If you're playing Destruction, Craftiest Emerald granting 70 haste and 33 crit, or the Crafty Alexstrasite granting 70 crit and 33 haste are possibly the better option for you, but in the long run, Sims would be the best way to tell what gems are best for your own character. Getting into enchants, Sophic Devotion is going to be the weapon enchant you're after in Dragonflight, and it is a primary stat increase for 15 seconds whenever it procs on your main weapon. Your cloak enchant will be homebound speed, which is unsurprisingly a speed increase. Your chest enchant will be waking stats, which is a baseline stat increase on your chest. Now, bracers are an odd spot. You have Devotion with speed being theoretically your best enchant in Dragonflight. However, Eternal Intellect is still an option from Shadowlands due to the fact that it's not eye level capped or restricted by any means. So theoretically, you still can get Intellect on your bracers, but we'll see if that lasts in the actual Dragonflight launch. If that doesn't last, Devotion and Speed is the best option. On your legs, you want to acquire Frozen Spell Thread. Now, you can make these yourself if you're a tailor, or you can work order them from a tailor somewhere to get the actual Intellect and Stamina increase on your legs. Any caster can get these in the game via a work order, even if you're not a tailor. Your boots, you want Planesrunner's Breeze on, which is, unsurprisingly, a speed increase. And your ring is most likely Devotion of Haste. However, it could be Mastery, depending on what your spec you're playing. The best way to tell is going to be running a raidboss.com sim for your own character to tell on your actual ring enchant. Now, as far as other enhancements are concerned in Dragonflight, your main flask or phial will actually be Phial of Elemental Chaos, which grants secondary stats in a random bonus effect and lasts half an hour. Your main potion will be Elemental Potion of Ultimate Power, granting a large amount of primary stat for half a minute on a 5-minute cooldown. You'll want to use Howling Runes in your weapon to give you a large amount of haste for 2 hours, very similar to Oils and Shadowlands. And as far as food is concerned, Grand Banquet of Kalamazi, which is a feast, grants you 76 primary stat. If you don't have feast though, things like Faded Fortune Cookies, which gives the same amount of primary stat, or Timely Demise / Sizzling Seafood Medley give either pure haste or a mix of haste and mastery, which will most likely be your best bet when it comes to personal food in Dragonflight. Now, when it comes to Affliction's tier gear in Dragonflight, it is the Scale Sworn Cultist set, and the 2-piece for Affliction says when Agony grants a Soul Shard, you have a chance to gain Cruel Inspiration, increasing your haste by 12% for 6 seconds. More haste, faster cast, more shard gen, all the above. Good 2-piece to have around. The 4-piece, Cruel Inspiration, so when the 2-piece procs, Cruel Inspiration, also grants 2 charges of Cruel Epiphany up to 5 charges. Each charge of Cruel Epiphany increases the damage of next Malefic Rapture or Seed of Corruption by 40%. Now, to clarify, the stacks you get, it does not stack 40, 80, 120, 160, 200. It's 4 individual stacks of 40% damage amp to either Rapture or Seed of Corruption. So the fact that it affects both Rapture and Seed is very good. It's good in single target with Rapture, or Cleave. It can be good in AoE with Seed. It has Mythic Plus relevancy. The unfortunate thing, I guess the interesting thing is that there's a lot of RNG with this. If this procs in your opener with your Phantom Singularity, your Dark Lair, all your CDs rolling, with your Trinket up, this is going to be a decent bit of RNG compared to other Afflock that didn't get the proc in its opener. If it procs during good parts of your rotation, great. If it procs during bad parts, well, you know, it's a bit unfortunate. But at the same time, RNG is RNG. We've had it for a while. I'd say overall, as far as, you know, A to F, this is probably a solid B plus tier bonus. It's good to have around a bit of RNG, but it actually does things. So when it comes to Affliction's opener, it might seem a bit daunting and overwhelming at first, but I promise once you get used to it, it's actually pretty simple and it's become second nature. Now, you can pre-soul tap the 5 shards for the boss's pulled here. I'm not going to do it in this case, but you can. Keep that in mind. The big thing, the first thing you want to cast is a precast Haunt into a precast Unstable Affliction. They'll hit the boss at the same time. Then you cast Agony, Corruption, Siphon Life. You cast Drain Soul to 3 stacks of Shadow's Embrace. Cast Phantom Singularity. If you're playing Soul Rot, you can cast it here too. Any trinket, potion, ratio, whatever at this point, then summon Dark Lair. And then at that point, you want to cast Rapture as much as you can. The first 3 Raptures will stack your Malefic Afflictions 3 times, and the 4th Rapture onwards, as long as you maintain Unstable Affliction, will proc Dread Touch. And the big thing about this rotation is you want to maintain the Dread Touch buff as much as possible. So typically you're trying to hold 1 shard to Rapture once every 6-ish seconds for that Dread Touch buff. Now, Phantom Singularity is a 45-second cooldown, which essentially means that you're casting it pretty much on pull, so at 0, 45 seconds, 130, and then around 215 or 320. but your dark lair is a 2-minute cooldown, which means that you're going to have to hold your second dark lair and probably later dark lairs a little bit to line up with your Phantom Singularity cast for max dot value, max dot extension, max I-beam damage, all of that. Now, outside of that, the big thing, make sure to maintain Unstable Affliction on a target so you don't lose Malefic Afflictions. Maintain Dread Touch as much as possible. Don't overcap on shards. There's times you might get good refunds where you can just cast a few Raptures anyways, even without Phantom Singularity being up, just due to not overcapping on shards. But the big thing, maintain Dread Touch, maintain Unstable Affliction, maintain Malefic Afflictions, maintain Haunt, or, well, maintain Haunt, which subsequently maintain Shadow's Embrace. And that's the gist of it. Oh, and cast Inevitable Demise if you're playing it at 50 stacks. It should line up probably about every 40-ish seconds in single target. So when it comes to Affliction's AoE opener, there are a handful of different builds you can play that, well, they play different abilities. Some play Haunt, some play Soul Rot, some play Doom Blossom, and some don't really play any of those. Now, this build I'm playing here is going to be a Grim Reach, Soul Rot, Dark Harvest build. I'll talk about the actual Haunt timings and the actual just Soul Rot cast timings as well, all the above to cover every scenario basically. So let's see the mob, the tanks running into a pack, gathering the mobs up. You can pre-cast City Corruption, then cast Vile Taint when they're all stacked to apply Agony and the Vile Taint dot. Cast Unstable Affliction. If you're playing Haunt, you can cast Haunt here. If you're playing Soul Rot, you can cast your Soul Rot here. And then at this point, you want to cast Summon Dark Glare. And if you're playing a Doom Blossom build, you want to cast 3 Malefic Raptures and then begin spamming Seed of Corruption with Sow the Seeds. If you're not playing Doom Blossom, just spam Sow the Seeds. If you're playing the Soul Rot Dark Harvest build, you'll have that crit amp, that haste amp, and this is where like the big part of your burst lies for Affliction. Casting Seed multiple times. If you're playing Soul Eater's Gluttony, the talent that reduces Soul Rot's cooldown, you'll have roughly a half-minute cooldown on Soul Rot. So you have this large profile without Dark Lair I-beam damage, but you have that Soul Rot Seed burst profile every half a minute roughly, which is one of the reasons why Affliction's very, very good in stacked 3, 4, 5 plus target cleave. Huge Sow the Seeds burst, huge Soul Rot cleave, and every 2 minutes you have Dark Lair with Grim Reach, you have larger CDs, that huge AoE I-beam damage profile. This is where Affliction excels. It doesn't excel in single target, but if you're playing AF, you're playing to its strengths, which is going to be that big stack burst cleave with just the abilities you have, whether it's Doom Blossom, whether it's Haunted Soul, whether it's Soul Rot, just big seed spam, Vile Taint applying every agony. If you're playing ID, Inevitable Demise, you can cast those Soul Rot cleaved, just drain lives. AF's good at stacked cleave, stacked burst cleave. When it comes to single target, regardless of whatever build you're playing here, it's a bit lacking. Now, when it comes to pets, you have 4 options as a Warlock, and it is your Imp, Voidwalker, Fellhunter, or Sayad. Now, when it comes to Mythic Plus, your best option, hands down, which you're going to play in 99.9% of every scenario in Mythic Plus, is going to be your Fellhunter. It brings a baseline interrupt in Spell Lock and a purge called Devour Magic, both of which are very good Mythic Plus based settings, even at times in raiding. Now, as far as raiding itself is concerned, the 3 pets of real option are your Imp, your Fellhunter, and your Sayad. Unfortunately, your Voidwalker, while it does bring a bit of AoE damage with Consuming Shadows, is just not worth it the vast majority of the time. The Imp is a range-based caster versus the Fellhunter and Sayad being melee-based casters, so if there's multiple adds on a fight that spawn, the Imp can just turn from left to right and start attacking them versus the Fellhunter and the Sayad having to run between them. So you lose a little bit of DPS there. However, both Imp damage and Fellhunter damage is normalized. They are one and the same. The Imp brings a Singe magic effect, which can be useful in raiding, removing a harmful magic effect from a player. The Sayad brings a Whiplash ability, which this separates this pet from every other one, essentially making it your best option in single target if no other mobs are spawning or you can maintain the buff. The Whiplash effect applies a damage increase to the target the Sayad is hitting once every 6 seconds, essentially when it stacks to full after a minute, making it take 10% more damage from the Sayad compared to the Imp, the Voidwalker, or the Fellhunter. If that effect is not applied, or if it drops, obviously you're losing damage. If that effect's not applied in some way, shape, or form, all of pet damage is normalized outside of that. The Voidwalker might do a little more AoE with Consuming Shadows. The Imp might do a little more at range, swapping targets faster. But for the most part, outside of that, pet damage is normalized. So the best single target option, if there's one target, Sayad. Best pet in Mythic Plus, Fellhunter. If there are multiple targets in the raid, you don't need to kick from your Fellhunter, play the Imp. Thanks for watching, guys. That should just about wrap the actual video up. Now, like I said, overall, Affliction's pretty customizable. You have a million different builds you can play in AOE, a few different customizable options in single target, but AF's main issue currently, as of November 24th at 2 in the morning, is that it lacks single target. But the cool thing is that even if they buff Affliction, it really shouldn't change a whole lot in the single target build, and probably not a whole lot in the AoE build as well. If there is changes, I'll make notes down below in the comment section, but for the most part, this is the gist of AF, so hopefully it helped answer all the questions you guys might have had. If you guys have any questions I didn't answer here, put them down below in the comment section. I'll be sure to get back to you. And before we end the video, I want to give one huge shout out to my patrons. Guys, thank you a million times for support on Patreon. I really appreciate it. If you're looking at supporting on Patreon, should be a link somewhere up here, as well as down in the video description below. And once again, if there are any major changes made to Affliction between now and Vault of the Incarnate's release, I will update the comment section below and possibly make a new video on it. If I do, I'll put that under as well. But yeah, I am pumped for Affliction. I think the toolkit is there for AF to be very good. The talents are good. The cooldowns are good. It's just the numbers aren't there. And if you give me an option of having either really good talents and cooldowns and things that like line up really well, CD-wise, but bad damage, or good damage and terrible CDs, bad talents, all the above, I'll take the good talents and bad damage, because in the end, buffs can come damage-wise, but they typically aren't overhauls in the middle of an expansion to specs. So, all that being said, thanks for watching, guys. If you liked the video, hit the like and sub buttons below. It helps out a ton. And I will catch you all again soon on stream. Peace.